Voice. Music, talk, and nothing but business with your hosts, Chris Natalini and Mick Michaels. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cosmick Voice. This is Season 3, Episode 17. I am here with my co-host, Chris Natalini.
What is up, man? How you doing?
And I am Mick Michaels. Welcome back, everyone. Chris, how you doing, my good man?
Doing fantastic. How are you, brother?
I'm doing great. Season 3. We're rolling right along. Very exciting. Some good content this season. Very good content. It's amazing what you can find on the bathroom wall of your local diner for content. And I wrote it all down back in August. Everything I could find. I was around the bowl, in the stall, at the divider, at the urinal. It's amazing what people have time to write while they're going to the bathroom. It's amazing they carry a marker with them when they go to the bathroom.
It's amazing you found a diner in space.
Yes, well, there's some up here, some strange birds, but they're here. But for some reason, they had all the content we needed for this season's show. So they must have the same problems out there in the galaxy as we do down there on Earth. So anyway, lucky us. What's been going on with you, man? Anything exciting?
No, brother, nothing at all. It's getting colder where we are on the East Coast and trying to deal with that. It's getting cold and dark early, which does not make for a very happy Chris. It is what it is. It's how it is, and we'll be dealing with it for the next couple months. We just got to get through. That's it. Just got to get through.
That's right. Right now, as we record this show, it is 39 degrees here at the space station. 39 degrees, and it's pitch dark.
Yep.
So you see, but then again, it's always cold and dark in space.
That is true. And Alaska.
Apparently space and Alaska are basically the same thing, so you really can't tell unless you fall into some snow. And then I guess I don't know. And I know people from Alaska are freaking out right now, so just email Chris at chris@thecosmicvoice.com, and I'm sure he'll answer it. All right, so another exciting diner bathroom wall topic. We're going to talk about why does it seem venues appear to treat local bands and artists cruelly and unjustly? Why does it seem venues appear to treat local bands and artists cruelly and unjustly? Chris, my good man, what do you think? You're a veteran of the scene, both locally, regionally, internationally, grammatically. Has this been your experience?
I can honestly say that I have had more, and I'm one of the lucky ones, I have had more positive experiences than I have negative experiences. Now, that could be for a number of reasons. That could be because, and you and I had spoken about this very early on in the podcast career that we have, you and I are two people that handle ourselves differently. We do not have an attitude. We do not feel that we are owed anything. We try to go in there and be level-headed and businesslike and polite and deal with a little give and take. And so I haven't had that many problems in terms of being treated unfairly. On that note, I have had those experiences, and I think that, obviously I've never played those clubs again because I don't think that people, let alone artists, I don't think people deserve to be treated like that. Sometimes it's just bad business. And why do they do it? Man, I'm not sure. I kind of feel like some clubs that do this to artists, I feel that they don't think, and I'm coming from an artist/musician aspect of my comment, I think that some clubs, I think they think that, that the bands owe them something because they're giving us a place to play. And that's, I guess it makes sense, but I'm the one that's doing the work to put people in seats in your club. And it's awesome that you're giving me that opportunity and I see that, but you can handle your business a little bit differently. I think that a lot of clubs or some clubs and owners, they look at bands as, just a kind of a joke, really. I feel that there are some that just go, they're just another band. There's a million more, and and so it doesn't matter, or we're just easy money because the bar's going to make us sell tickets and to guarantee money. Because listen, I mean, you and I have spoken about this before. The scene is not easy. It's hard to get people to shows. And so, there are some times where you have to sell tickets. And I get that, because if you sell tickets, then you're guaranteed people at the bar or club, whatever. And I totally get that. I really, really do. But I think clubs and bars don't look at us as an equal partner. I feel like they look at us like, I don't know the right word that I'm trying to use. I don't think they respect us as musicians and artists and bands and however you want to put it. I really don't. I think they respect us once we put asses in seats. Then they go, oh, that's a whole different story. But I think for some, I don't think we're respected, especially guys like you and I who are in the metal scene. I think that's a whole nother animal. We're not just another cover band or original band. We're heavy metal originals, which that just slices it down even further. But on the opposite end of that too, I think bands have kind of done that. I think it goes 50-50. I think also too, there are some bands that have put club or club owners in those positions because bands make dumb decisions. And and I know people are going to be hearing this a little late, but you and I have just run into a situation over this past weekend that bands really kind of slit their own throat at this club that you and I speak very highly of, and the owner we speak very highly of. And but bands do it too, man. Bands do it to themselves, and I've seen it a million times. I played a club, I guess a few months ago over the summer. The one band just was a no-show. So it kind of goes 50-50, man. I really believe that sometimes the bands, sometimes what's that saying, that rotten apple isn't the whole bunch, or however that
you got to ask the odds.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I do. So I think that, and I'm not saying that bars and club owners are right in the way they treat bands and artists, but I understand it because I've seen how bands treat club owners and bars. I mean, it's just, it's a very, very 50-50 thing. And I think it's only gotten worse because unfortunately there's so many bands out there that don't really care about people's businesses or people putting hard work into shows. They just don't respect it. And that's, that's a band issue on every level, I believe. I believe there are some levels even higher than us that there's bands that just don't put the respect into the clubs, bars / club bars owners, promoters, however you want to put it.
Yeah, well, listen, so I'm going to say that most of my experience has been positive as well, though there has been a percentage, and I think everyone has experienced this, that there are times when it's not as great as you would hope it to be. And in my case, I was surprised quite often, simply because, as I've mentioned in the past, we look at this as a business and we don't come in with a lot of attitude or looking for an issue because, we're going to work. And it's just like a regular job. I guess there are people that do, but we don't come into work, punch in, and then look to cause problems. Now, there are people that do that. I understand that. I don't understand the mentality of that. But we're there to do what we've been contracted to do, or what we promised to do, or what our job is. And anyone who's at a job wants to streamline it the best way they can so they get the best results, right? So they can either produce more, make more, or again, you want to perform at the highest levels that you possibly can. So that's usually how we do it. Like we don't come in drunk or high or, this giant chip on the shoulder, start throwing stuff around, ordering people around. Never do that. So that being said, most of my experiences, and I'll just talk about this band over the last 10 years, they've been pretty well positive. I'd say 90% or more, 95%. But there's that small percentage that unfortunately sticks out. And at one point, it seemed like the percentage started to go up. Like it seemed like everywhere we were going, it was the same mentality with the people that were running the venue. Now, when I say running the venue, that doesn't necessarily mean that they were the owners or the partners in it. But sometimes you have silent owners, and then you have people that have been put in charge. They've been hired to run the venue. Stage manager or a bar manager, talent buyer, sound person, whatever. there's a lot of different titles that people have, and sometimes they wear multiple hats. And I've been surprised at the way some of these people have treated other people. Now, again, it is a people business. It's a people service type of business. And a lot of those people aren't necessarily cut out for that. But the flip side of that is, so are many band members. They are not necessarily people.
Right.
They may be performers, or they may think they're performers. And there's a wide range there. There's a scale of who's really a performer, who's not, who's a professional, who's not, who's a hacker, who's not, so on and so forth. But right now, talking about the venues, there are people that probably shouldn't be in that capacity dealing with people, because they just come across like it's a street fight. And maybe that rubs certain people the wrong way. And again, you'll get that with a lot of bands. You'll get that pushback. Now, we'll use the example of metal bands, right? Some of these guys, let's just be honest, and this is not a put down or anything, because my family was blue collar. I'm blue collar. I'm proud of that. I have no qualms about that. I have no problems with white collar, okay? However, there's a lot of metal bands that are blue collar people, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I've played parts of the country where we played in blue collar areas, and metal was the anthem, right? And they came out in hordes to watch it, right? That's our particular kind of audience, so that works for us. Anyway, so there's some of that pushback, like, hey, don't talk to me like that. This is the way it's going to, blah blah blah. But I have seen bands. I've been on the road long enough to know that I've seen bands come in with an attitude. Like they're rolling up to the sidewalk and they already have attitude, chip on their shoulder. Yep. You know what I mean? So, like you said, and I'll agree, there's a balance, and some of the hostility that bands will experience is because of prior experience that these venues have had with hosts and hosts of artists of all different kinds. Yes. So they never know. Now, I do have to say that I usually see, if we're doing a much bigger show with a name attached to the marquee, that regardless of how well or bad those artists or bands are in terms of their relationship with people, the venue does their best to treat them as quality as possible, simply because they're the moneymaker, right? Because money rules the world, right? Money keeps things going. Everybody wants to be paid at the end of the day. They don't want to lose that payday. So that's what but they realize that it's not the local bands per se that are bringing in the draw. I'm going to slice that up in a second. So there's usually the attitude, well, we can just kind of push them around. Doesn't matter. They're not the big name draw. However, in today's market, the big names don't draw the way they used to. That's why they go to 3, 4, sometimes 5 bands deep to get them to bring people in, to cover some ticket spread, and to get that national or that big name draw on the marquee paid. Because they're not coming to play for free, and most of them don't say, well, we'll take whatever comes in the door. That was only 2 people. Now, they have a number that they've already decided on. They know what they're getting. There's a contract that's signed. They got to make good on that contract. So it's a matter of just, getting horses and mules to do what they have to do. And that's what your local and regional bands are set up for.
This is Stephen Piercy from Rat, the Rat Bastard. You're listening to the Cosmick Voice.
And it's funny because you and I were proof positive of that, and many other bands, because there was a time where you and I were working, the famous club here in Philly, the Trocadero, and we were selling tickets for Nationals, because the Nationals, the pre-sales weren't that great.
No.
So the Troc was contacting bands, through a mutual friend of ours to sell tickets to try to help boost the show. And there were times where in my former band, Dawn of Correction, there were times where we would physically outsold the National. I know we did it with a band called Dope, and there was a time where we sold just about as many tickets as Overkill did. Mind you, I'm going back a number of years because Overkill's on a different plane right now. But there was a time that, we were selling tickets and we were almost outselling the Nationals. If we weren't outselling them, it was very close.
I've done some of that too. And again, it depends on who the National is, of course. But,
yeah, of course.
So to clarify that for people, what they're saying is the house isn't selling tickets on their own for that national act, that big name act. And the bands then are given a ream of tickets, and the bands are out selling what the house is selling just based on the marquee's name. That's right. So just so we're all, so I've been there as well. Yeah. And sometimes, a lot of times they push listen, the thing is they get bands to sell tickets. And in reality, depending on how the deal is structured, you're on the hook for that anyway. Now, there are some deals, and we talked about this before, like whatever you don't sell, you don't owe, but you got to bring back the tickets. And you have to you have to make sure you clarify. But that's another reason that some venues, some of your larger venues that have those big names come in, that have that pre-sale ticket thing for opening acts, there's all this issue sometimes with tickets. They're being stiffed money here, or like you said, bands don't show up. There's tickets missing. They're low on money. This is a few years ago. I played up in New York somewhere with a show with Brittany Fox. We were support for Brittany Fox. Very excited about that because it was kind of like, hometown heroes type of thing, So we had that opportunity. We did that. Some of the earlier bands, they had to sell tickets. And the one band didn't have the money to cover anything. They're out in the parking lot trying to scrape up money to cover what they had to cover. I don't know what the problem would have been after that, but I'm sure it wouldn't have been, it would have been handled in a certain way, and nobody wants to, everybody wants to go home that night. But I don't know what they were thinking prior to. Yeah. I don't know where the miscommunication, and this wasn't a band that just kind of like, that was their first show, right? They had been around for a bit. They've been on, so I'm not sure where that was thinking. I just remember seeing the one band member, he was pale as a ghost, he was sweating bullets. Like, what are we going to sweat? You know what I mean? So, like you said, sometimes bands just make not the best decisions, and they create these scenarios where they could be avoided altogether. Usually, listen. So when it's time for us, like when we pull up to the gig, we get there on time or early, always to give ourselves plenty of time if there is a problem. To kind of lay of the land, stuff like that. We find some parking. Either we all go in or two of us go in and make a connection, immediate connection with the venue. Ask a couple questions, introduce ourselves, say, here's what we have. Where can we park? Is there a specific load in? What can we bring in? So on and so forth. Clarify everything. Because some venues give you that information and some venues don't. And some give you something in between. It's kind of like you gotta know some kind of, you need a decipher to figure out what are they talking. So okay, and then you're like, okay, but so sometimes this puts a face to whatever. So this way you're not just all of a sudden ripping the door open and you're pushing in stacks and drums and cymbals and you're dropping stuff and everybody, they're like, oh, what's going on here? Because again, if you're dealing with a multi-level venue, you may have a stage manager, sound person, bar manager, owner, and they all have their, because you'll hear, well, you got to wait till the sound guy gets here. You know what I mean? 2 hours later, you're still waiting, the sound guy isn't there. Or, let him figure this out. He's got to do this. Or the first band's got a sound check, so you guys hold off. And it's all this. So again, the more you know before, the less you'll have to worry about when you're there. I mean, it's just a small, especially in today's world, the communication, and it should be this way. The venue or the booking person or whatever should be accessible to those questions. And they shouldn't have an attitude about it because you want to clarify some stuff, especially if you're traveling out of town for it or you're traveling further than your local scene. Okay? Right. Because you may have never played there before. If you've played there before, then you know the routine. There should be no surprise. So why try to get one up on the man if that's not the way, if you want to, again, I know I'm playing both sides here, but that's it is both sides. There's certain venues that I've been at that have policies that, in my opinion, and again, people will say, well, that's just your opinion, you don't know everything, and you don't know it. I get it. Maybe I don't. But they have some really weird policies that just don't make sense. And I'm going to tell you right now. So I actually played two larger clubs. I've played big shows. And as soon as you're done, you take your equipment, you exit right out backstage, out the door to outside. Yep. I've ended up in a parking lot with all my equipment spread out, and the door closes and locks, and that's it. I've done that in the summer. I've done it in the rain. I've done it in the snow. I've done it in the freezing weather. It's a nightmare. Like, I don't understand. Yeah. I don't understand that. That's a total disregard, in my opinion, of what we just did for you, what a band just did for you. You just played 30 minutes, 40 minutes, riled up the crowd, sold some tickets, brought people into your club. Because let me tell you something. You bring people into the club, whether they like you or not, your band, 90% of those people you're bringing in the club drink. So they're already making money, right? That's the whole idea. Yep. That's why local venues will pack 5 bands, 5 regular bands. They figure most bands have 4 people. That's 20 people. 90% of them are going to drink. It's a give me. It's just a give me. Some will drink more than others. That bar will do okay. I mean, I've been in places where there's been no local draw in the middle of nowhere, and there's only 5 people at the bar, but that bar still made out because those 5 people drink like an army of soldiers. You know what I mean? But it's the truth. It's the truth. Yeah. So one time I played a show, I had to have a fill-in bass player. So I actually contacted one of my mentors who has helped me over the years, new perspective on music and stuff, much older gentleman. And we played a very large show. And he was shocked while we were taking our equipment off, escorted right out the back. We couldn't even make sure we had all our stuff. And he goes, and this is a guy who's been playing a number of years. He was involved with some very large people over the past 30 years. He goes, I've never had this experience. He goes, I don't understand. I go, that's this scene. And again, that's that original metal scene, because people look at you like, and you had started to say it earlier, but bands in that local and regional area are looked at as disposable. They're disposable, right? Because we're a dime a dozen anymore. And I've heard, like they said, there's an ass for every seat. Somebody will do the deal. Somebody always wants to play because ego drives most musicians, most performers, right? They got to do it. It has to do it, So if one doesn't do it, there's always somebody else that's going to step up to the plate and do it. And we talked about this. There were some cool shows that I would have loved to do, but the ticket deals that they were giving the bands was like, that's crazy. Yeah. If I,
it's impossible.
Yeah, it's impossible. Nobody could do that. I mean, there's no scene unless you are the top. If you were the top draw, still don't think you could do it. Because if that was the case, why would you have 5-6 bands deep before the national? Doesn't make sense, right? Because if you could draw those kind of numbers, why don't you just rent out the Firehouse, do a beef and beer? You're going to make tons of loot. Right? It doesn't make sense. They just want you to guarantee some kind of money, and it's impossible. They know it's impossible.
And basically too, they're putting the local bands on the horn to pay for the bigger headlining bands. That way, none of their money, they don't lose anything.
Right, they don't lose everything, and whatever local bands. Right, and whatever they're making stays in the bar. Some places offer food, whatever the case may be. Yeah, absolutely, I agree with you. There is a lot. There's some people that are just real rough with bands, because that's the way they look at it. They hire somebody and it's like a drill sergeant thing, because they think that the funny thing is they all think that bands are nothing but a bunch of kids playing. Yeah. In our scene, in the metal scene, a lot of the bands that I play with are guys my age. Within that 10 year, and you're kind of shocked sometimes, or 10 years younger, 10 years older, that are still playing. So there's a 20-year circle of age. And then there's always the younger bands. I've been on bills where, we were the oldest band or something like that. There's always a weird vibe going on, but, it is what it is. Again, you stick to yourself. You do what you have to do. You don't provoke any issues and all. But I've seen venues treat bands bad. And I've seen bands come in and treat venues horribly. So, like you said, there is a give and take, and there's a reason why. And again, today, like we've talked about before, there are so many bands. More bands than there were back in the 80s at one time playing a scene.
So many bands.
Yeah, so many bands. Because, my memory's starting to fail, so, I could be completely wrong, but let's just say, like, 87, 88, there could have been maybe, I don't know, 5 good places to play back then. Mm-hmm. And, 3 of them were the major ones. And then there was the next tier, right? And they all had their shows No one had to compete because they all had a built-in crowd, so to speak, right? You had your people that went to them. Then you had your people that visited, kind of floated around. Maybe Friday I was here, Saturday I was here, Sunday I was here, right? But then you had your people that were there Friday, Saturday, Sunday at one venue. And they got to see, I don't know, 10 bands, 15 bands, right? As opposed to now, and that may even have been a lot, 3, 6, 9, maybe 10 bands, okay? Now you could see 15, 20 bands a weekend in a show. And then, like we talked about before, in one area, there were 3 clubs, 3 venues. All of them were booked with metal shows.
Always.
And there was 5 that's 15 bands in one little area. That one booker had posted something, say, guys, we're killing each other because nobody has any people.
Right.
So it's unfair on the venue because they're losing money. And then it's unfair on the bands because those bands are not drawing because there's nobody to draw. They demonstrate that they can't draw, and the venue doesn't want to have them back. So it's like there's a healthy competition, and there's a competition where nobody's making any good on it. That you have to be careful of that as well. And I know it sounds like we're jumping around, but that's why, again, you'll start getting certain attitudes or policies when, at one point for a while, there was again, back in the day, you could become a house band. You could play every night in your area at a different club. No one had a problem with it because there was a built-in crowd, and you also brought in people. They followed you around. Then it became the thing by the late 90s. If you were given a contract or whatever, you couldn't play in that area 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after, or within a certain mile radius. You remember that? Even 10 years ago when we started that, there were still some businesses, some venues that were adhering to that. It was cool. I understood it, but at the same time, it prevented bands because there wasn't enough places to play. And now there's even less, but I think everybody's, there are some old schoolers that go, no, you can't, that's too close, that's a conflict, or, again, because they all know today that most places, their built-in clientele is about 2 to 5 people.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's it. They can always count on 1 or 2 people that they see all the time come in, get some drinks. They're not there for the bands. They're there because they drink. That's their watering hole. Maybe they cash their check there, or they owe money. Who knows? There's booking there. I don't know. Maybe there's gambling. I don't know what the case may be. Unlike a restaurant, that can open its doors, and as long as the food's pretty good, even if the food's not good, some of these places still seem to do real well, right? But the customers are treated well. It's kind of like the same thing, right? I don't know. It's hard to say, and I know what you're saying, like what you said earlier. Like, we're doing our work to fill in a gap or a lull in that evening. We bring some people in. We keep people engaged for, I don't know, half hour, 40 minutes, maybe more, which keeps them drinking for the most part.
Right.
And then sometimes you're not treated too well. As much as, and everybody complains, like, bands aren't paid. And people go, well, you got to bring people. Well, okay, that's the dividing line, right? If I bring people,
I'm still not getting paid.
I'm still not getting paid. I mean, and they don't give drinks. You can't even get water.
The one thing I've learned, and this isn't every club, because I know there are some that are better for what we do, but there are some clubs that won't offer money if the place is packed.
Right.
Guys will run out the door when the show's over, and you'll never see a dime because maybe it was never talked about. You know what I mean? Like, or maybe the band's just, and this is the band's fault, but maybe the bands on the bill just assume that, we'll get the door when we're done or whatever. And then at the end of the night, the place is packed, everybody's drinking, and people go home.
Well,
and then the bands are left. Yeah,
and the venues, listen, and honestly, let's call it what it is. The venues realize that. They don't want to pay. They figure because the bands are going to come back because their ego, they want to play, they need to play, right? Mm-hmm. And if we can get away with it, then we get away with it. What are they going to do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Really, there's a bullying tactic that happens. But the truth of the matter is, nobody goes to a job and doesn't expect to get paid for their time. But except a band. Right?
Yeah.
It's okay to not pay a band for doing what they do. That I don't understand, and I don't care if it is the band's fault, and I don't care if it was never discussed. There's never even a gesture. Never even a gesture. I mean, I've played some places where the money wasn't great and the guys knew it. Hey, we don't usually do, the metal that you guys do, but I like what you do. I'd like you to come down. Here's, I'll get you a small cut of the door, but what I could do is, I could give the band $50 credit at the bar. You can either buy food and everybody gets one drink on top of that. Okay, that's okay. I get it. And really, in the grand scheme of things, they're actually getting away cheaper because they're giving you a certain amount of money, which is like, a retail cost, but they're not giving you their cost is a lot cheaper than that. That's, let's be honest, because they're not selling it what they bought it for. They're making a small profit. I get that.
Right.
And everybody should be making, if it's expected, if the band expects and accepts that the bar is going to make money, then why shouldn't we get it's like anything else. You're not going to do advertising in the paper for your venue and not expect to pay for it. You're not going to you're not going to bring in a big name endorsement and not expect to pay for it or do something in return. You're not going to expect Jack Daniels to just drop off 6 cases and go, "Hey man, do what you got to do. Thank you." And then it doesn't happen like that. But they expect bands to come in, drive, bring their own stuff or whatever, play a set, do this, do that, and then not get paid. And then when you ask about it, you're ridiculed, you're bullied, you're talked to like you're a piece of garbage, or you don't know what you're talking about. And then the sob stories come out. Well, I got to pay this, I got to pay that, I got to pay this. And again, why? Because we're just playing guitars and drums, we're writing songs. Like we're not, to them that's not work. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of people think it isn't work. It's not considered work. They don't consider it to be work at all. Now, again, listen, is it, well, depending on how you're doing it, is it lugging boxes and digging ditches? Well, it could be. If you're carrying all your own stuff, and depending on how much stuff you're carrying something from here to there, you're doing this, you're setting this up. They're usually long nights. You're trying to, you got to pay gas to get there, tolls, parking, so on and so forth. I've been in places the clubs don't even offer you a parking voucher or anything. It's just
listen. I played places you can't even get a drink.
Yeah, I know.
And I don't even drink alcohol.
I know. Even they can't even give you water. I think it's just nuts. Again, your entertainment. If you're not going to take care of the bands, go get a jukebox. Pay that service fee to get a jukebox.
You are listening to The Cosmic Voice with your hosts, Chris Natalini and Mick Michaels.
I played a very well-known venue here in Philly. It was a very big show. We were the openers, and not only did we have to load out as soon as we were done into the alleyway, we weren't even allowed water on stage. Like, we had to buy it. They wouldn't even give it to us. And we couldn't even bring outside water in.
Yeah.
So we had to buy it there. I mean, that's just disgusting to me. Like, that literally is you just looking at bands and going, we really don't care.
Yeah, and listen, just dollar signs over them. That's all.
And I can tell you for a fact that one of the national bands tried to bring in a case of water, and the venue told them no. The security stopped them at the door, and this is one of the national touring bands. And the security stopped them at the door and said, "Nope, sorry."
And then again, this isn't to bash the venues because, if you've listened to the show, I say it all the time. I'm the first one to tell you that artists will do it to themselves time and time again.
Oh,
they repeat.
Listen, 100%.
Yeah, they'll
100%.
repeat stuff. They get into this frame of mind, this mindset, this tunnel vision, and they can't break free, and they feel there's an entitlement. I've met so many bands in the past few years with this entitlement that they think that they're deserved all this stuff. And none of us are deserving of anything that we haven't worked hard for.
Right.
So, again, if you're out there and you're doing it and people are still treating you badly, well, like Chris said, you just don't deal with those type of people. And I've said this in a previous podcast. If 2020 has taught me anything, like, I don't want to waste my time, effort, energy, space with anything, anyone, any place that's going to not uplift me, right? May the highest in me bring out the highest in you and vice versa type of thing. That's the way I look at it. I don't have time for that because at any time, as you can tell, the rug's just pulled out from under you. So why waste time? And if it's not worth it, it's not worth it. You don't need,
right.
A lot of those people, they come and, unfortunately, both bands and venue people, they come and go. They hang themselves. They get in their own way.
Yeah.
They disappear.
Yep.
They sabotage their own ability to get, they may have the talent that's unbelievable, but they stumble over their own feet because they allow themselves to do it. A lot
Correct.
of people shouldn't be necessary. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should be doing it. You know what I mean? There was a joke that, the record exec today was a tire salesman 6 months ago. That kind of thing. Not to say that he may not be capable for the job, but he just doesn't know the industry yet, right? Or he just assumes, or he figures, well, it's just making records, or it's this, that, and the other thing. And, and there's a lot of guys that jump on ship to be a musician, a performer, and go, well, it's just me banging some strings. And, well, that's not it. And that takes away from the other bands that are doing, this. It's part of them. It's an extension, Like I said, it's a double-edged sword. You talk too much about one, you're going to get bashed. You talk too much about the other, you're going to get bashed. I've been at some venues that, man, you're just treated like a good human. It's like people, hey, how are you? Nice to see you. You know what I mean? What can I do for you? I mean, I've had, and again, this is not a pat on the back type of thing, but because I have and with my band, we have a certain way of doing business, and we don't mind doing our share. Like, hey, well, you need help setting up the stage. Do you want us to carry? I've helped other bands that I don't even know move their stuff in because I know what it's like to lug stuff around by yourself. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So why not help somebody else out? Sometimes you catch them off guard. They don't know what they, But when you're kind and considerate, and you're polite, you got these mannerisms, you ask questions, you're articulate enough. Not like, hey, man, what the isn't there a place I can go share? You come across that way, you're going to put people off. That may not have been your intent, but again, someone that doesn't know you, well, there you go. I mean, so immediately now you're in the wrong light that you don't want to be in. It's one of those things. I mean, can a balance be found? I think it can be. It's just that both sides are going to want to have to do it. And like I've experienced, there's been a lot of great venues that I've played and that I will go back to again and again. And some people go, that there's nothing to that venue. Well, so what? The experience is what's, it's a non-stress. I don't feel like I'm a criminal. I don't feel like I'm doing something wrong. I don't feel like I'm less than. Like, why should I go into some place that's going to make me feel less than? I mean, it happens. You know what I mean? And you have to make that decision. Do you want to play that show or don't you want to play that show? If it's a show you want to play and you're aware of what the thing is that you have to deal with, well, that's a different thing, because then you can go in with a mindset that says, all right, I'll just let it be as it is, and I'm going to do my thing no matter what. I know what to look for, and I know how to avoid it. I don't give people reason when all possible. If you do that and people are still whatever, well, listen, I was told a long time ago, some people just aren't going to like you. That's it. You got that face that people don't like. And I know, because I got that face.
I think it's a catch-22. I think some clubs, promoters, I think they treat bands very badly because some bands don't treat clubs and promoters very well. So I literally think it just goes, unfortunately, it's just this, round and round robin that we're all doing this dance that, happens. Unfortunately, it's the nature of the game. And it's just because there's so many bands and because so many bands feel that they're entitled to things, and some clubs and bars think that they're entitled to things. And it's a very bad situation. And unfortunately, not everyone realizes that. Everybody unfortunately gets defensive right off the bat.
Absolutely.
And don't solve the problem, or at least, fix the issue where you can all kind of be together and do the job that's supposed to be done and everybody leave happy.
As we're speaking to bands, primarily bands and artists, you have to have a standard. This is my opinion. You have to have a standard that you stick to, and we talked about this before. Whatever your model is, you do it consistently. Kill them with kindness if you have to. Keep your manners high. Be polite. It goes a long way. You'd be surprised, because some of these people are caught off guard because they're not used to being treated well. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not a subservient type of attitude. There's nothing wrong with serving your community, serving your fellow man. I'm not going to get preachy here, but everybody thinks that when you serve another person that you're being subservient and you're in some, higher, lower level. That's not the way it is. By serving others, you serve yourself because you benefit the community and you create a circle flow of energy that just, it's unmatched. So you'd be surprised at what a smile, a thank you, a please, excuse me, things like that can go, right? And sometimes it's harder for younger bands to understand that because there is that entitlement. They're all piss and vinegar and excited and everybody's a rock star right out of the gate type of thing. Nowadays, you had to build that confidence and that feeling and flow of professionalism, even if you were just a local rock star, to build that up. But nowadays, as soon as these people hit the stage, it's the very first time they're immediately a rock star. And because that attitude's been celebrated and embraced over the years. And then you get these guys that have this attitude and this mouth, and they just kind of spew things out because they think they can and they get away with it. And it's terrible, both at the higher levels and the lower levels, because, if the higher levels are doing it, the lower levels are trying to emulate that. You know what I mean? And it just doesn't make sense. But you'd be surprised at how well the venues will treat you the best that you can if you do all you can. And like I said, you have to have a standard that you follow every time. If you break that standard, don't be surprised when things don't go away. And again, you stick to that. This is the way we do it, okay? All right, yeah, we'll figure it out, whatever the case may be. That's a business. That's always being professional, and that's surmounting any situation that comes your way. That way, listen, you're always going to be throw curveballs, right? You've seen it. We just experienced it. Curveballs happen. This business, even if you have it written down, it isn't necessarily the way it's going to be. This business changes like that. So just be prepared for that, but you stick to your guns. Always be professional. You'll be surprised at how... And again, this goes out to the bands. Because if we make the change, and it's okay. Hey, listen, we take the road less traveled. There's nothing wrong with that. We want a better experience, then we make the change. Because sometimes you can't count on other people to do it. You have to make that decision. That's something we decided to do a long time ago because we do it in our regular lives. So why wouldn't we carry that over? We found that it was successful in our regular lives. Why not carry it over in this? And this is a tough business because you're dealing with people of different calibers, of different levels, of different mindsets, of different educations. Hey, guess what? It's like life. That's the same thing. So you do your best. All right. Chris said, listen, I need you to be preachy tonight. So I said, all right, I can do my best at that.
No, man, you're preaching the truth, bro. It's got to start somewhere. So why not you be that change? And that's okay. That it's got to start somewhere.
That's right. It's got to start somewhere. Keep your head up, keep your dreams high, and you'd be surprised at how much you can accomplish. What do you think, buddy? You got anything else you want to add?
Nope, brother. That is it.
All right. If you like that, check out some of our other episodes. We've got a few seasons out there at www.thecosmicvoice.com. Get yourself to step into the Cosmic Verse. Thanks, everyone, for listening. This is the Cosmic Voice. Be sure to check us out at thecosmicvoice.com. Like and follow us on Facebook at The Cosmic Voice. You can find The Cosmic Voice everywhere you listen to online podcasts, like Deezer, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Stitcher, and so many more.
Okay, folks, that will do it for another episode of The Cosmic Voice. Mick and I would like to say thank you very much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
You're listening to The Cosmic Voice. Music, talk, and nothing but business.